Good evening, everyone. I am Councillor Chris Rayburn, the Mayor of Strathbogie Shire Council. I would like to welcome you to the extraordinary council meeting today, the 21st of September 2021. I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land which we are meeting. I'd like to pay my respects to the elders, past and present, and also emerging. This meeting is being held in accordance with the Strathbogie Shire Governance Rules and the Ministerial Good Practice Guidelines, MGPG1, for virtual meetings. All of our councillors and staff are working remotely and alone, so there is no need for them to wear face masks, so you can see and hear them properly. The only exception to this will be a brief period where Councillor-elect Dave Andrews will be in the same room as our CEO, Julie Solomon, to take the oath of office, which must be conducted in the presence of the CEO. Due to COVID-19 pandemic restrictions, this meeting is being held virtually. I want to take this opportunity to outline the voting at today's meeting, which will be held by show of hands. If a councillor has a conflict of interest in any matter, they will be asked to leave the meeting and no discussion on the matter will commence until we are sure they have done so. Councillor will be contacted to rejoin the meeting after the matter has been considered and voting concluded. If we have any technical difficulties at today's meeting, which we've just had two of them, which means we are unable to broadcast the meeting to the public, we'll adjourn the meeting for 15 minutes. If the issue is not resolved after this time, we may extend the adjournment or even delay the consideration of unfinished business on the agenda to another day when the meeting is to be live streamed. I would like now to welcome the Municipal Monitor, Ms. Janet Dorr. Janet is a very highly experienced administrator who has been appointed by the local government minister to provide advice to council over the next few months. We are already benefiting from her experience, knowledge, and would like to take this opportunity to say welcome and thank you, and we look forward to working with you very closely. Change in orders of business. Councillors, we have to swear in council-elect for the Lake Ngambie Ward, Dave Andrews, prior to conducting any more business. In accordance with Rule 29 of the Council's governance rules, we are able to change the order of business by way of a resolution. Councillors, can I have a motion to change the order of business so that we now consider agenda item 12 urgent business? Is there a mover? Councillor Binks. Is there a seconder? Councillor Murray. Councillor Binks, would you like to put your motion forward, please?
Thank you, Mayor Rayburn. Yes, I would like to move a motion to change the order of business under Rule 29 of Council's governance rules to consider agenda item 12 urgent business to allow Councillor-elect David Andrews to take the oath of office. Thank you.
Thank you. Any councillors who've got anything else to say? If not, well, I'd like to put your show of hands, please, to move the motion. All those in favour? Those against, declare it carried. I'll now hand it over to the CEO to take over the business of swearing in Council-elect Dave Andrews to take the oath of office.
And welcome, Councillor-elect. It is my pleasure to undertake the oath of office with you tonight. I'll read, and if you repeat after me, that would be great. This oath is undertaken in accordance with Section 30, Section 1 of the Local Government Act 2020, Regulation 5 of the Local Government Governance and Integrity Regulations 2020, and Part 2 of the Oaths and Affirmations Act 2018. Councillor-elect, I swear by Almighty God that I will undertake the duties of office.
I swear by Almighty God that I will undertake the duties of office
of councillor in the best interests of the municipal community.
Of councillor in the best interests of the municipal community.
I will abide by the Councillor Code of Conduct.
I will abide by the Councillor Code of Conduct
and uphold the standards of conduct set out in the Councillor Code of Conduct.
and uphold the standards
Of conduct?
of conduct outlined in the Councillor
Code of Conduct.
Code of Conduct.
I will faithfully and impartially carry out
I will faithfully and impartially carry out
and exercise the functions, powers, authorities and discretions vested in me under the Local Government Act 2020 and any other act to the best of my skill and judgment.
and any other act to the best of my skill and judgment.
So, Councillor Andrews, if you'd like to sign the document here. I've now sworn the oath of office in front of me, and I now warmly welcome you as Councillor David Andrews,
Thank you.
elect. Thank you.
Welcome, Councillor. Welcome to the around the table to the open and debate. Now, would you like to say a few words to your constituents and to our fellow councillors?
Let me get sorted here. I'll just very quickly, very pleased to accept the vacancy which has become open. I do give my best wishes to Mel, who left the position and vacated the position. I guess it's my Stephen Bradbury moment to, and hopefully I'll grab a hold of that and be able to work with a team of councillors and the Strathbogie staff and make a good fist of it. I understand I was told the process of actually running for council or running for election I'd enjoy thoroughly, and I didn't appreciate that fully at the time. However, I walked 15 k's around Nagambie, handing out brochures and various things to just about every doorway and out to Kerwin's Bridge and Goulburn Weir, etc., and through the businesses there. So I met a lot of nice people, and there's some good people in the community there. I'm sure your communities are likewise, and I did enjoy the process very much. So I'm pleased to be on the council, and I intend to do the best job I can for that. So thank you for welcoming me on.
Pleasure, and I look forward to working with you.
Thank you.
Okay, councillors, we'll now move back to the business as listed in the agenda. Item 3, do we have any apologies, CEO Solomon?
Thank you, and through you, Mayor, we have one apology for tonight, and that's from Kristen Favaloro, the Executive Manager, Communications and Engagement. Thank you.
Thank you, CEO. Disclosures of conflict of interest. We have no disclosure of conflict of interest tonight. Okay. All right, confirmation of minutes of the previous meeting. Councillors, the meeting held on the 17th of August and the extraordinary meeting held on the 31st of August 2021. Councillors, can I have a mover and a motion? Can you speak to the motion too, please? Someone like to move? Move, Sally. Sorry, Councillor Hayes-Burke. Seconder? Councillor Binks. Sally. Councillor Hayes-Burke, would you like to move your motion, please?
Thank you. Yeah, I'd like to move the motion to approve the minutes of the last two council meetings. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Binks, do you want to have any say? No. Okay, all right. Any councillor want to speak on these minutes? If not, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? All those against, declare it carried. CEO Solomon, do we have any petitions tonight?
Thank you, and through you, Mayor. Yes, Councillor Binks has requested that a petition objecting to the proposal for a recreational vehicle-friendly site in Violet Town be lodged this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillors, can I have a councillor to move the motion, and can you please state your motion? Thank you. Councillor Binks, your motion is?
That we acknowledge the petition which was submitted by the community through me, and we acknowledge the acceptance of that petition. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Councillor Hayes-Burke, thank you. Councillor Binks, do you want to speak on this motion further?
Thank you, Mayor Rayburn. I've just had, this has been an ongoing project, the RV friendly towns in the Shire, and yes, Councillor.
Sorry, can I, this will be a conflict of interest to myself, so I think it's best that I draw your attention to that now, Mayor Rayburn.
Okay,
So would you like me to leave the meeting for this petition?
Yes, please.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Christy.
Okay, continue, Councillor Binks.
Thanks, Mayor Rayburn. Yeah, so this was a decision by council from the June meeting of 2020 last year to look at the RV friendly towns in the Shire, with Longwood being the first one to have a trial and Violet Town to be next, which was delayed somewhat with COVID restrictions. My understanding from community members that have been in touch with me, whilst they do support the idea of the RV friendly proposal and that project, they're just wanting to, I guess, voice their concern around the process by which a site has been proposed and chosen, and wanting to ensure that that safety, especially of children, is considered. So it's just sort of acknowledging that they're feeling heard. And I appreciate that this is a community-led project. It's not a council-led project. And so I just want to, I guess, draw councillors' attention to this section of the group of the community, perhaps, which aren't being heard, and hope that we can work with them to ameliorate their concerns and have them addressed in a way. Today I've already had conversations with the RV committee, or RV friendly committee chair, and we're arranging a time to meet and discuss things in person, and I look forward to being able to resolve and hopefully, yeah, put their concerns aside. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Binks. Councillor Hayes-Burke, did you want to say anything? Okay, any other councillor want to speak on this issue? Petition, Councillor Murray? You're on mute, Paul.
Can I just ask where this petition is located at the moment? Physically, like, I haven't seen the petition, so.
It was sent to me, and I forwarded it on to Di to be included in this meeting. So yeah, I can forward it to fellow councillors. Is that? But it will be included in the minutes, is my understanding, Paul, from tonight's meeting.
Yes.
So it was, yeah.
Yeah, I've cited it.
So it's not in the agenda, sorry.
No.
Okay, thank you.
No. All right, any other comments, councillors? If not, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? Reg and Paul, are you not voting, or are you frozen?
Sorry, I'm abstaining.
Abstaining?
I'm abstaining.
Okay, thank you.
I'm abstaining. I didn't know anything about this, so,
I don't know anything about it.
so
Okay.
I'm just abstaining.
All right. Councillor Horrigan, you should not be back yet. Thank you. Okay, so 2 persons abstaining, 3. Councillor Andrews, I can't expect you to be voting at this one. You've because you know nothing about what's been going on, so I'm a bit disadvantaged to ask you to vote on this particular issue. So there's 3 voting for, 2 abstaining, and yeah, we'll leave it at that. So we'll put that as passed. So we'll move on to the next one. That the petition lay, the actually motion is to have the petition lay on the table for us to comment back to the community. Would that be the correct answer, CEO? Yes. Thank you. Okay, reports of councillors and mayor. I'll allow councillors to speak first tonight. Welcome back, Councillor Horrigan. Okay, who would like to speak first, please? Councillor Hayes-Burke.
Thanks, Mayor Rayburn. I'd like to welcome Councillor David Andrews tonight, and also welcome Janet Dorr. I guess I just wanted to touch on a few things. I think we have so much to gain by the appointment of Janet Dorr, the Municipal Monitor, and I think all councillors and staff are very excited to learn from Janet's guidance in order to be able to achieve great things for the community. On the ARTC, could I just please ask everyone in the community, whether you're from Euroa or just within the Shire, to please take a look at the draft designs that the ARTC will be presenting to the community tomorrow. We'd really like to be would really like to ask you to be very vocal about what your views are, because we really need to make sure the decision makers hear the views of the community. And council is going to get behind the community, and we are staying very strong on that. And just on the council plan, it's still out for feedback. So could you please let us know if there's anything missing or if there are any areas that you think we should be focusing on. We're very keen to hear from you, and that's open for community submissions until the 29th of this month. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hayes-Burke. Councillor Binks.
Thank you, Mayor Rayburn. I too would like to welcome Councillor David Andrews. Thank you for accepting the vacancy, and I'm really looking forward to working with you in these coming years. I'm also excited to learn from Janet Dorr and understand how I can be a better councillor for the community. And already, as Mayor Rayburn mentioned at the beginning, we've already gained some great insight and leadership from Janet in the week that she's been with us. So I'm really looking forward to the experience that we'll gain from that. There's a lot of stuff happening on our Share Strathbogie platform at the moment. So if you haven't been on it recently, I encourage you to jump online and check out. Not only is there the council plan, which Councillor Hayes-Burke just mentioned, which is currently up for your input and feedback in, but we also have the announcement of Kobe Palace, who is our new Arts and Culture Officer. And she's put up an introductory video along with a survey and encouraging people to participate in that. And there's also another one, which I just forgotten for the time being, but there was another one that came through today, which was around refresh my memory. Our economic development strategy, that was it. So we've got our economic development strategy, and that one just came out today. And so really keen to hear from the business community and those to help us frame and shape our economic strategy for the coming years. It's a changing area, and there are definitely lots of opportunities and lots of new opportunities that lay ahead for us. So I encourage community to get involved on that platform. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Binks. Councillor Murray.
Thank you, Mayor Rayburn. I'd like also to welcome Janet Dorr, our Municipal Monitor, to her role in assisting us, and I look forward to working with her. And I'd also like to welcome David Andrews. Councillor David Andrews, I think, will be a great asset, and certainly he'll be appreciated by Councillor Reg Dickinson, I'm sure, as an assistant over there representing the community of Nagambie. So I look forward to working with him. I'd like to second Laura Binks's, Councillor Laura Binks's reference to the engagement opportunities, and just remind people to have a look at those opportunities and make the most of those, including the arts and culture survey, the council plan, and the economic development strategy, which we're looking for some feedback. The streetscape project, which I know people have contributed towards, I'm hoping that draft will be out this month, and I know that I'm looking forward to seeing that, along with many people in the community at the moment. I continue to attend at the Daily Dose down at Avenel from 1 to 3 on a Friday when opportunities present themselves, when we're not in COVID lockdowns. And I look forward to seeing as many people as possible down there for a chat with your local councillor, if you can get down there. And finally, I'd like to congratulate the Mitchell Shire on their declaration of a climate emergency last night. And in particular, I'd like to congratulate Councillor Eldridge and Councillor Banks, who were the mover and seconder of that motion down at Mitchell Shire, which was carried. They declared a climate emergency there, a support for the climate emergency action plan, which they're undertaking, and the allocation of some resources for that development. So it's great to see our neighbouring Shire moving in that direction, and I look forward to perhaps some collaborative opportunities with them to develop a response to the current climate emergency. Thank you very much, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Murray. Councillor Dickinson.
I'm going to sound like a broken record here. Yes, also welcome to Janet Dorr and my new sparring partner, Dave Andrews, and farewell to my old sparring partner, Mel Lycos, and I wish her well for the future. This time of year seems to be the time of AGMs. I've been to a couple recently, and they've been pretty positive experiences with the Community House and the Historical Society. Unfortunately, I've had to put my weekly meetings on hold because the Valley is still unable to open its doors. However, I'm still available to speak to anyone who wants to catch up with me by phone. And finally, the most exciting news for Nagambie this week is the opening of the skate park. You've put a smile on a lot of faces amongst a couple of broken bones. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dickinson. Councillor Horrigan.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. Same as everyone else, welcome David, Councillor Andrews, and also to Janet Dorr. So thank you very much, and it's good to see you guys around. I just want to also second what Councillor Hayes-Burke is saying regarding ARTC. Plans are being released tomorrow. You'll be able to see them online. You'll be able to see them down in Binney Street, and please make sure you get your feedback out to them. Just a reminder too that the 2021-2022 Community Grants Program Round 2 opens on the 1st of October. And the reason why we have a round 2 is because we didn't use all our money in round 1. So please make sure you apply. The money is to go out, as part of the community grants program. And I just want to make sure that the community are all okay with the COVID-19. So I know that a lot of our members actually work in the Mitchell Shire and they are deeply affected and possibly have lost their jobs, etc. The government does have payments that you can access, and I highly suggest that you look into those services. And if you need to reach out for any support, you can always contact us or contact the Shire. Thanks, Mayor Rayburn.
Thank you, Councillor Horrigan. I would just like, as Mayor, to say thank you to all councillors, because you've covered just about everything I was going to talk about. But the one thing I really like to emphasise to our community, which has been a issue and it'll be an issue for a number of years yet, is the ARTC over or under bridge in Euroa. As Councillor Hayes-Burke and Councillor Binks and Councillor Murray have all said, ARTC, the issue there is something which we have to work as a community to ensure that we get the best result for our community. We as a council will always support the community in any way we can to help them go forward, but it's up to the community to have their say on which part they would prefer, under or over. And once that decision is made, council will then go behind that decision and work very hard to get that implemented, and also all the railway precinct to be updated and to be brought up to scratch so our community can enjoy the area around the station and all the other area for our community to enjoy. So it is part of the decision making to do the under and over, but it's also about the railway precinct, and that is something we will be fighting very hard for to ensure that we get that done properly. To the rest of our community, I understand, you know, we've had Shepparton being locked down, we've got Mitchell locked down now under COVID. So for all our community, please take care, look after yourselves, and to ensure that you do the best you can to talk to each other and make sure you keep each other a pat on the back or just say hello to someone. Last week we had Are You OK Day, which I spoke to our staff about. We had about 75 people, and it was a great session I had with our staff. And you don't know who you're working with or what people have gone through in the last 12 months, 2 years, or even in the last week, as one of our councillors has been through something in the last month. So, yeah, no, it's you just got to always remember we're there to help each other, and just ring up and say hello to someone and make sure you're looking after each other, and that's the main thing. So thank you, everybody. Okay, we'll go to public question time. CEO Solomon.
Thank you, and through you, Mayor, there are no questions for this evening's meeting. Thank you.
Wow, that's a first. Thank you, CEO. Okay, we'll go to community. We'll go to strategic and statutory planning first. We'll go to 9.1.1, planning permit application P2021/072, use and development of land for a dwelling and associated outbuilding at 24 Babylon Lane to book. Director Tingay, would you like to say something, please?
Thank you, Mayor Rayburn. As you have said, item 9.1.1 is for a planning permit application P2021-072. The application is for the use and development for land for a dwelling and associated outbuilding at 24 Babylon Lane in Tabilk. Through this piece of land is located in the farming zone and partially affected by a bushfire management overlay. Through the advertising period, there was one objection that was received. The objection has remained following advice back from the applicant of the objector's concern. The objector wished that their objections still remain. The subject site for the farming land in this part of the municipality is a 100 hectare area for an as of use right. In this particular part of the municipality, there is the context of the land. There is actually a number of small rural lifestyle living blocks that have resulted from a subdivision that occurred in the 1980s. The size of the land is quite small, and it's been determined that large farming scale activities are not essentially applicable on this particular site. So there is a recommendation on page 2 of the agenda that council issue a notice of decision to grant a permit. Thank you, Mayor Rayburn.
Okay, thank you, Director Tingay. Councillors, is there a mover of the motion, and can they state the motion, please? Councillor Binks, can you state your motion, please?
Thank you, Mayor Rayburn and Director Tingay, for the report. I would like to move a motion that Council accept the recommendation as stated on page 2 of tonight's agenda, please.
Thank you, Councillor Binks. Is there a seconder? Councillor Murray. Councillor Binks, would you like to speak?
Thank you, Mayor Rayburn. Yes, I would. I thank the officers involved in this report. They did a really thorough report in sort of assessing this project. As Director Tingay mentioned, it does fall outside of the permissible development on a lot under the size in the area. But given the context of the site and what has happened in the surrounding area, I support their recommendation that we grant the permit. And I do want to just note that, that despite the objector not removing their objection after having contact, I do appreciate their objection and their concern with the loss of farming land. However, I believe that the inclusion of the 173 agreement onto the property, which will mean that the house, once it's built, will not be able to be excised from the lot. So it is protecting that land and allowing it to be farmed with, as proposed, to have breeding goats, so they'll be able to take out their farming enterprise. So I think whilst there is a genuine concern around the loss of farmland from the objector, I believe that the report as presented to us tonight by the officers addresses that, and also I guess it's an opportunity to reflect on the different ways that people are choosing to farm, and that we can farm on smaller lots, and it is appropriate in this area where we've already got many subdivided, like this was already a small subdivided lot, to allow a building to be built on this property. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Binks. Councillor Murray.
Thank you, Mayor Rayburn. I'd just like to second that motion that we grant the permit, and based on some of the aspects that Councillor Laura Binks has raised, it's under the 100 hectare rule for that area, but it's in the middle of a section which is smaller allotments which date back to, I think, the 1980s, and I believe that this subdivision will not further detract from farming opportunities in this area, but instead I think it probably will enhance it with at least some rural agricultural activity happening on the property. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Murray. Any other councillor like to speak? If not, I'd like to put the motion. All those in favour? Those against, declare it carried. Okay, we go on to planning applications received and planning applications determined 1 to 31 August. Director Tingay.
Thank you, Mayor Rayburn. Another busy month in the planning department. Council this month, between the period of 1 to the 31st of August, received 27 new planning permit applications. Through that period, we also issued 17 planning permit applications, and also 2 planning applications lapsed and 1 application was withdrawn. We received a variety of applications again this month for a number of uses and developments, and also for a number of subdivisions. There's a recommendation on page 33 for Council's consideration. Thank you, Mayor Rayburn.
Thank you, Director Tingay. Councillors, would someone like to move and state their motion, please? Councillor Hayes-Burke, your motion is. Thank you.
Oh, can I please ask a question of the officer, of Director Tingay?
Yes, you may.
Director Tingay, there's an item on page 43 in relation to the removal of native vegetation. I'm just, for the benefit of the community, I was hoping you could please just detail what council does in terms of avoiding the removal of native vegetation to ensure that we stick to the state guidelines with regards to native vegetation removal. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hayes-Burke. Inbuilt in the Planning and Environment Act, there are a number of clauses and provisions that relate to native vegetation, and in particular that clause is 52.17. Essentially, native vegetation within the Planning and Environment Act, the first point of call is avoid. So avoid native vegetation removal. If that can't be achieved, the second is minimise the removal. And then lastly is if removal has to occur, that there is an offset provided. As part of any planning permit application, we strongly recommend that any potential applicant come and speak with council around their application before they lodge. So essentially that we as the planning authority and also the applicant has a clear frame of mind and clear direction in regards to what is required under the Planning and Environment Act. But certainly first and foremost under the Act, whilst there are exemptions to that, generally speaking, it is that avoid is the number one principle.
Thank you. Director,
Thanks, Director.
does that answer your question, Councillor Haysbert?
Yeah, so officers will go on site and assess each application on its merits to assure the community that these guidelines are followed, basically. So thanks for that.
Thank you, Councillor Haysbert. Is there someone, Councillor, like to move a motion to accept this? Sorry, Councillor Haysbert, you have put your hand up. Can you state the motion, please?
Yes, I'd like to move the motion to note the report on page 33 of the agenda. Thanks.
And Councillor Murray was the seconder. Councillor Haysbert, do you have anything else you'd like to say on this?
Oh, no, thank you. Thanks for that.
Councillor Murray?
No, formally.
Thank you. Any other councillor like to speak? If not, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? Declare it carried. Thank you. Okay, on page 42, on my page 42 anyway, 9.2.1, Euroa Little Theatre Incorporated, application for sponsorship. Director Tingay.
Thank you, Mayor Rayburn. Council has received an application from the Euroa Little Theatre Incorporation for some sponsorship to the value of $3,000. That sponsorship is essentially to go towards the purchase of ground-operated wind-up lighting towers, and that is to reduce the risk, the OH&S risk that is currently posed on the volunteers. And in addition, the hire of a wheelchair lifter to address accessibility concerns and barriers to inclusion for performances for their events. So the application has come in. It's been assessed against our sponsorship guidelines. Officers are comfortable that it ticks a number of the criteria for this sponsorship program. So we are recommending to council that council endorse the request of sponsorship for $3,000 to be funded to the Euroa Little Theatre Incorporated. There's a recommendation on page 42 for council's consideration. Thank you, Mayor Rayburn.
Thank you, Director Tingay. Councillors, is there a councillor? Councillor Murray, can you state your motion, please?
Thank you, Mayor Rayburn. I'd like to move the motion that council endorses the request for $3,000 in sponsorship to be funded to the Euroa Little Theatre Incorporated to assist with their production listed on page 42 of the agenda.
Thank you very much, Councillor Murray. Is there a seconder? Councillor Binks. Councillor Murray, would you like to speak further?
Just to say that the application meets the criteria for funding for our sponsorship program in that it promotes community engagement and participation. It supports gender equality and social inclusion and improves accessibility with the particular items that they're requesting, and it contributes to the health and the vibrancy of our community. So I endorse this motion for you.
Thank you, Councillor Murray. Councillor Binks, would you like to speak further?
Thank you, Mayor Rayburn. Yes, I'd like to second Councillor Murray's comments and second his motion. The arts are a really important part of our community, and I think it's really vital for our small shire, though it may be small, it is mighty, that we take an active role in supporting our artistic and creative community. We all know that the arts play an incredible role in our lives. I think that's become really apparent in the pandemic. The entertainment and the book reading and the shows we've seen are really vital. So I'm really happy to second this motion, and I'm excited to be able to get out and enjoy the theatre in person when that becomes available. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Binks. Any other councillor like to speak? Yes, Councillor Horrigan.
Thanks. Thank you. Through you, Mayor Rayburn. I second the comments that have been said, and this is one of the great moments of being a councillor, being able to sponsorship for community groups and community initiatives like this. And reading through the report, I mean, for us to sponsor lights so that people don't have to climb up 5-metre ladders, you know, in dangerous situations to do things like this, I just think it's really, really good. And it's, you know, I can't wait to get out there in October too, especially with all this COVID. It'd be great to see a show again.
Thank you, Councillor Horrigan. Any other councillor? If not, I'd like to put the motion. All those in favour.
Can I just sum up the? I sum up as a mover? Yes. As somebody who's been involved in your old little theatre in the past and done many shows, including some at the schoolhouse where this equipment will be housed, I'd like to say that you know, it's really important that these sort of accessibility devices are used and are encouraged in our community and to make it safe for everyone to be involved in. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Murray. All right, I'd like to put the motion. All those in favour? Against, declare it carried. Thank you. The next one is 9.2.2, Tourism, Arts and Culture Advisory Group. Meetings held on the 21st of June. Director Tingay.
Thank you, Mayor Rayburn. Continuing the arts theme, on page 47 on the agenda is a recommendation to Council that Council note the minutes of the Tourism, Arts and Culture Advisory Group meeting held on Monday the 21st of June. There was no formal meeting that took place in July, as there was no quorum achieved. The Tourism, Arts and Culture Advisory Group continued to discuss and lead and drive a number of initiatives that align to our arts and culture strategy. There is a recommendation on page 47 for Council's consideration. Thank you, Mayor Rayburn.
Thank you, Director Tingay. Councillors, as the Director has said, there's a report and recommendation on page 47. Can I have a councillor move the motion and state their motion? Thanks. Councillor Horrigan, your motion is?
Thank you, through you, Mayor. I'd like to move the motion that we adopt the recommendation on page 47 of the agenda.
Thank you very much, Councillor Horrigan. Is there a seconder? Councillor Binks. Councillor Horrigan, would you like to speak?
Thank you, through you, Mayor. I just want to thank the Tourism, Arts and Culture Advisory Group for everything that they do, and that we love having these reports come to council because it is good to see you know, what's happening in that field. And yeah, thank you to all the volunteers who attend it.
Thank you. Councillor Binks.
Thanks, Mayor Rayburn. Just to thank the board, and I'm a part of that board. I participate in these meetings, but it's really great to get the reports from our meetings and see how things are progressing in this area. There's been a few stalls in our arts and culture rollout due to COVID, but I know that the group, the team under Amanda, are doing some great work despite restrictions, meaning lots of things having to be shifted or moved online. And I really thank them for their flexibility and ability to continue to deliver a program in the challenging circumstances.
Thank you, Councillor Binks. Any other councillor like to speak? No, Councillor Horrigan, do you need to speak again or you're right? Okay. All right, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? Declare it carried. Okay, 9.2.3, Resource Recovery Centre, Refrigerate Management and Cost Recovery. Director Roth.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So with recent changes to the Environment Protection Act, there's renewed attention on how we handle waste. In particular, 4 of our transfer stations handle what's known as priority waste, and this includes refrigerants from old refrigerators. As a result of the legislation, we need to engage licensed contractors to dispose of that material, which incurs increased costs. So we're recommending that the cost for the disposal be increased from $10 to $20 to ensure cost recovery of that service. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Director. Councillor, on page 53, there is a recommendation. Is there like to move a motion, please? State their motion. Councillor Dickinson. Councillor Dickens, would you like to state your motion, thanks? You're on mute, Councillor Dickinson. I'm the lucky one, Councillor Dickinson. I'm always off mute.
I'd like to move the motion as recommended on page 53, that council increase the charges associated with the disposal of refrigerant containing materials at our resource recovery centres to $20 to reflect the true cost of handling ozone depleting substances and synthetic greenhouse gases under the new Environment Protection Act 2017.
Thank you, Councillor Dickinson. Is there a seconder? Councillor Binks. Councillor Dickinson, would you like to speak on this?
Just to say that this is not a money-making venture. This is really just covering council costs, and it's also helping the environment. So I think it's a good move both ways. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dickinson. Councillor Binks.
Thank you, Mayor Rayburn. Yeah, I'd like to second Councillor Dickinson's comments, and I think it's important to reflect, whilst this is an increase in cost at the disposal site, considering the life cycle of a fridge, they don't have to be disposed of too often. So yeah, in considering the pros and cons for this raise, I deemed it to be a reasonable price raise to cover costs and to deal with the safe disposal of these items. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Binks. Councillor Horrigan.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor, I'd like to speak against the motion. I can see the the options that are contained within the report and the different options we had. I do think that the cost to council, which could be roughly $3,272 a year, would be much more beneficial than what I believe, or my opinion, is that we may have, or we may see excess dumping now, and people not taking this item to them. The options that are in the report, I would have, supported a different option, but I think to double the fee after already increasing our waste charges just recently will have a deterrent and perhaps, in my opinion, have a more negative impact on the environment.
Thank you, Councillor Horrigan. Is there any other councillor like to speak? Councillor Murray.
I'd just like to speak against the motion too. I think option 2 would have been a much fairer option to pursue. It would have cost the council a little bit of money, not $3,000 or $4,000, but I think a staggered increase is the most appropriate way of imposing a new charge on the community at this particular time. Many people are struggling, and I see no reason why we can't wear that cost for a year or two whilst we move to a user pay sort of a system for the disposal of refrigerators. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Murray. Any other councillor like to speak? Okay, Councillor Dickinson, you do have the right to reply.
Yeah, taking into consideration those 2 points, and also the consideration that Councillor Binks mentioned, how often do we dispose of a fridge in a lifetime? And when we do, it's going to cost us $20. Really, it's not a huge cost, and it might happen 2, perhaps 3 times in our lives if we're talking about the disposal of a fridge. And I can't see that people are necessarily going to balk at that cost and go and dump their fridges out in somebody's paddock. So I stand by my moving of the motion that this is a reasonable cost, and it's not going to break the bank when somebody takes their fridge out to dispose of it properly and environmentally.
Thank you, Councillor Dickinson. Okay, I'll put the motion. All those in favour of the motion? Those against? Declare it carried. Okay, 9.2.4, which is 2021-2022 Community Grants Program Guidelines. Director Tingay.
Thank you, Mayor Rayburn. In April this year, officers put up the amended 2021-2022 Community Grants Program Guidelines. Within those guidelines, there were some amendments made, and one in particular was around educational institutions being ineligible to apply for the program. Through the first round of community grants that were offered just recently, there was some clarification and some queries that had been raised regarding the eligibility of educational institutions in council facilities. Our officers have since reviewed the guidelines, and we're putting a recommendation to council tonight for the adoption of the revised guidelines that provides further clarity around the definition and eligibility of educational institutions, and that being in particular that non-privatised early education providers who receive minimal funding and operate in council's facilities should remain eligible organisations for this grant program. There's a recommendation on page 60 of the agenda for council's consideration. Thank you, Mayor Rayburn.
Thank you, Director Tingay. Councillors, as Director just stated, there is a recommendation on page 60. Can I have a councillor move a motion and state their motion, please? Councillor Haysbert, your motion is?
Thanks, Mayor. Yeah, I'll move the recommendation on page 60 of the agenda.
Thank you, Councillor Haysbert. Is there a seconder? Councillor Murray. Councillor Haysbert, would you like to speak?
No, I think that it's a great program, and I'm really happy to offer this to the community for groups that don't have funding sources available to them as readily available as some of the other groups that have now been taken out of this grant round.
Thank you, Councillor Haysbert. Councillor Murray, would you like to speak?
Just briefly, Mayor, just to say I support this recommendation for those groups who don't get a lot of funding, those educational institutions, and I think they ought not be excluded from funding for these community grant program. Places like the kindergartens and so on need to be resourced, and I think we have a role in assisting with that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Murray. Is there any other councillor? Councillor Horrigan.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor, I'd like to speak against the motion. I do not believe that the educational institutes in this particular case should be excluded, although I understand that they can source funding elsewhere. I believe that so can other community groups. I think it's really important to understand that they are a big part of the community, and they're the backbone of our community as well. I mean, they're part of it. They're teaching our children. They're getting them together, especially in COVID times. That I'd like to see them apply for community grants, and I'd like to see them being able to do things to get people together. They're also there to help, parents work, and so I just don't believe that they should be excluded.
Thank you, Councillor Horrigan. Any other councillor like to speak for or against? If not, Councillor Hayes-Burke, you have the final say.
I guess some of those institutions that were excluded do have private funding sources, and that's why they've been excluded. So council, in this decision, council wants to do the best for the community and offer that avenue of funding to the groups that it deems the most in need.
Thank you, Councillor Hayes-Burke. All right, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? Declare it carried. Thank you. Okay, 9.2.5, the Euroa Community Garden, Director Tingay.
Thank you, Mayor Rayburn. The Euroa Action Group was successful in securing some budget within Council's operating budget for the 2021 budget via a Pitch My Project submission that they made throughout the draft budget process. That submission was in relation to developing a community garden in Euroa. Officers have been working with the Euroa Action Group to identify possible land sites within Euroa that would be suitable for a community garden. At this point, there has been a parcel of land identified, and that being at 16A Brew Street in Euroa, which is owned by council. This parcel of land encompasses the Euroa swimming pool and also runs through to Brock Street. There are a number of considerations and opportunities that need to be explored with this site. So this report is coming to council to look for council's support to progress with the proposed identified site by undertaking broader consultation with community and also surrounding residents in relation to the establishment of a community garden at that site. And then following that consultation period, provide a report back to council outlining the summary of the engagement and also the next steps in relation to progressing a community garden and where that location might be. There's a recommendation on page 80 for council's consideration. Thank you, Mayor Rayburn.
Thank you, Director Tingay. Councillor Horrigan.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor. May I please ask Director Tingay a question regarding this report?
Yes, you may.
Director Tingay, could you please give me a time frame on how long something like this will take, roughly?
Thank you, Councillor Horrigan. Could I just clarify, please, Councillor Horrigan, that you are referring to the actual establishment of the community garden, that it be open and ready for community to use?
No, sorry, Director Tingay. The undertaking of the consultation, receiving the report from the officers with the feedback, and then detailing to the Euroa Community Action Group whether it has been approved or denied. To that point, please.
Thank you, Councillor Horrigan. Essentially, we would look to undertake, depending on tonight's decision, we would look to undertake that consultation in October, and then we would also look to provide a report back to council on our next steps, possibly at the November council meeting. Obviously, throughout of this, throughout the whole consultation period, we will be working quite closely with the Euroa Action Group around the proposal. And obviously, this site has been investigated, and this site, I guess, has been deemed the most appropriate. Whilst there are still some other avenues that we need to explore around, the actual use on the site and a number of the operational details, we will certainly continue working with the Euroa Community Action Group, but hope to be out in October.
Thank you.
Okay, councillors, is there a councillor like to move a motion and state their motion, please? Councillor Murray, your motion is?
Well, thank you, Mayor. I'd like to move the recommendation that we continue to work with the Euroa Action Group to progress the concept, and that we undertake some consultation with the surrounding residents and receive a report from the officers as outlined in the recommendation on page 80. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Murray. Is there a seconder? Councillor Hayes-Burke. Councillor Murray, would you like to speak?
I'd like to speak in favour of this motion. I think it's a sensible one. The Aurora Action Group, Community Action Group, is one of our lead sort of engagement groups within the community, and they've done a fair bit of work over a long period of time to try and work out where the best place might be for this. They've come up with a location. But I think it's important also for the council to be to do some due diligence in terms of checking with local residents around the site, and also getting a report from officers about some of the more practical aspects of the development of this site for the use of a community garden. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Murray. Councillor Hayes-Burke.
Thanks, Mayor Rayburn. Yeah, it's exciting to see this community project come into fruition, and I'd like to, take this opportunity to invite the action group to possibly come and present to council what its plans are for the site. I think that would be helpful going forward.
Thank you, Councillor Hayes-Burke. Any other councillors like to speak? Councillor Horrigan.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. I too am in favour of the recommendation that is on there, and the timeline that Director Tingay has roughly been able to provide. So thank you very much for that. I just I suppose I'd just like to get it out there that if at any time we're looking at this site as maybe not being suitable, it would be nice to bring it back to council sooner, because I know the Euroa Community Action Group are very, very keen to get this garden underway, and I'd really hate to disappoint them. And then obviously when we get into summer, it might be a little bit too hot depending on what happens this year. So just to note that feedback. Okay,
thank you, Councillor Horrigan. Any other councillor like to speak? Councillor Binks.
Thanks, Mayor Rayburn. Yeah, I'm excited to see this project progress. I think community gardens are a really great asset to our communities. I'm familiar with Mary's Garden in Mary's Lane in Violet Town, which has been a really successful community garden project that has involved broad community participation, plus also broad community feeding and education around sustainable food growing, seasonal food growing, health and well-being. So there's lots of knock-on benefits of a community garden that I'm excited to see progress.
Thank you, Councillor Binks. Any other councillor? If not, Councillor Murray, you have the right of finalising the discussion.
No, I waive that right. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. All right, I'd like to put the motion. All those in favour? Against? Declare it carried. Okay, page 85, 9.2.6, Action Group Funding 2021-22, Director Tingay. You're on mute, Amanda. She's gone slow.
Thank you. Can you hear? Oh, am I back?
Yep, you are back.
Okay, thank you. Sorry about that internet trouble. I will start again. Thank you, Mayor Rayburn. You can hear me okay?
Yes.
Thank you. On page 85, there is a recommendation for Council's consideration in relation to awarding funding to 5 projects that have been submitted by our action groups, and also, in addition, undertaking further consultation with action groups that did not submit projects for this funding round. We have a funding round that's open to action groups, and this year it opened in August and closed, opened on the 1st of August and closed on the 27th of August. Action groups have an opportunity to apply for funding for community projects that align with their community plans and community aspirations. There are a number of community plans that are due for renewal that our action groups will start to work on shortly. We received a number of applications, and through the applications and through the assessment process, in line with our guidelines, officers are recommending that 5 projects be awarded funding, totalling the sum of $17,864, and funding conditions will also be attached, should Council support, to those individual applications. In addition, there were a number of action groups, Ruffy, Strathbogie, Ngambie and Longwood, that didn't submit through this round. So we are requesting to Council that we reopen funding for those community action groups, and that officers continue working with those action groups to support them in putting in an application if they choose to do so, and then come back to Council in December with any items, with any projects that have been considered to be put forward for funding. There is a recommendation on page 85 for Council's consideration. Thank you, Mayor Rayburn.
Thank you, Director Tingay. Councillors, is there a councillor who'd like to move a motion and state their motion, please? Councillor Murray, and your motion is, thanks.
I move that that Council awards the funding to those 5 projects that are listed on page 85 of the agenda, and we authorise officers to continue the consultation with action groups who have not submitted projects, and that we reopen funding for those projects.
Thank you, Councillor Murray. Is there a seconder? Councillor Dickinson. Councillor Murray, you have the floor.
I'd just like to say that these action groups, as we were saying before, are an important part of our communities, and they need to be supported. And there are a number of these action groups that have considered the best projects for their particular communities, and have gone through a process to work those out, and that they align with the community plan and the council plan, and that there's a community need. They've demonstrated a community capacity. They fit in with their budget. So I think we ought to be supporting that. And although some of the applicants didn't get the amount of money that they requested, the Avenel group didn't ask for more money, but only got 5,000. I still think it's an important thing for them to be supported, and I'd like to recommend this motion to my fellow councillors. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Murray. Councillor Dickinson. You're on mute, Reg. You're on.
Sorry, computer issues. I think it's great to see council putting money back into the community like this, and well done to those community action groups that did put in their applications and they got a grant. I don't know what the rest of these community groups are doing when they've got the opportunity to get a share of the cash tin. Where are they, and why don't they jump in and apply for these funds? Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dickinson. Any other councillor like to speak? Councillor Binks.
Thanks, Mayor Rayburn. Yeah, I'd like to support the motion and the comments made by Councillor Murray and Councillor Dickinson, and yeah, just really encourage those action groups that didn't submit. I understand there were various reasons, and their own strategic plans are up for renewal, and so there's a bit of background work happening there, and look forward to seeing some more community groups being funded in this second round. And I thank the officers for their flexibility and persistence in ensuring that our community groups are funded. Thank you.
Councillor Hayes-Burke.
Hi. I'm sorry, I didn't know you knew I needed to speak. I wanted to note to the Euroa Action Group, well, while I would love to support their proposal to update the signage in Euroa, because I agree that it does need updating, the reality is that we're not quite ready with our branding strategy, and we need to do some community engagement around that. When we do come to that, we'll certainly be seeking the community's input via our Shire Strathbogie site.
Thank you, Councillor Hayes-Burke. Any other councillor like to speak? If not, Councillor Murray, you do have the final say.
No, I waive the right. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against, declare it carried. Okay, we go to tender. Page 93, 9.2.7, tender for contract CN 21/2201, operation and management of pools. Director Tingay.
Thank you, Mayor Rayburn. It's hard to believe on a very chilly spring day that we're going to be talking about our outdoor pool season this evening. So Council went out to a public tender for the operation and management for our pools for a 3-year period, with the option of 2 times 1 year extension at the satisfaction of the Chief Executive Officer. At the June 2021 Council meeting, Council in part decided to authorise officers to proceed with a competitive tender process to source a provider to manage and operate Council's aquatics facilities for the 3-year period, with the option of 2 times 1 year's extensions. At the closing of the tender on the 6th of August, Council received 1 tender submission. That tender submission was evaluated against the criteria, and it is deemed that Belgravia Leisure Services it was deemed that Belgravia Leisure Services had the expertise, capability to be able to deliver this contract. There's a recommendation on page 93 for Council's consideration. Thank you, Mayor Rayburn.
Thank you, Director Tingay. Councillors, does a councillor like to move a motion and state their motion, please? Councillor Horrigan, your motion is?
Thank you, through you, Mayor. So I'd like to move the motion that we adopt the recommendation on page number 93 of the agenda.
Thank you, Councillor Horrigan. Is there a seconder? Councillor Hayes-Burke. Councillor Horrigan, would you like to speak?
Thank you, through you, Mayor. I'd just like to speak, and I think I did the same at the last agenda when we were talking about this, that I am a big believer of having a company, I suppose, that has worked in the field over a period of time to come in, especially relating to OH&S, health and safety, etc. So while I thank the volunteers and the people before that, we did get good feedback regarding this company. Yeah, so thank you to Belgravia and welcome.
Thank you, Councillor Horrigan. Councillor Hayes-Burke.
Thanks, Mayor. Yeah, I second those remarks of Councillor Horrigan. It's an area where we definitely need to call in the experts, and so I commend the officers for doing so.
Thank you, Councillor Hayes-Burke. Councillor Binks, would you like to speak?
How did you know I wanted to speak?
If you put your hand up.
I'd just like to, thank the officers, but also it's a reminder to our community to use these fabulous pool facilities that we have in the community. That it's a really great part of our summers to be able to go down and have a swim or relax and chill out by the pool, grab something from the tuck shop or the milk bar or the can or whatever they call it down at the pool, the kiosk, I think it is it's a kiosk at a pool, and that that it's a great little community facility that we have dotted across our whole Shire, look forward to having a dip with you all come summer.
Pleasure. Thank you. Any other councillor like to speak? If not, Councillor Horrigan, you do have the right of reply. Thank you. All right, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? Declare it carried. Okay, page 100, 9.2.8, which is the contracts awarded under delegation as approved Council's 2021 Capital Works Budget. Director Tingay.
Thank you, Mayor Rayburn. This report relates to a number of tenders, requests for tenders and requests for quotations that have been awarded under delegation, that have been awarded under delegation. And this report most relates to the works that have formed part of the Council's 2021-2022 Capital Works program. There is a recommendation on page 100 for Council's consideration. Thank you, Mayor Rayburn.
Thank you, Director Kingay. Councillors, is there a councillor who'd like to move a motion and state their motion, please? Councillor Murray, and your motion is?
I move that we accept the recommendation that Council notes the contracts awarded under delegation by the CEO and by the Director, listed on pages beginning page 100.
Thank you very much, Councillor Murray. Is there a seconder? Councillor Horrigan. Councillor Murray, would you like to speak further?
Look, there's some great projects listed here. Footpaths are always keenly sought after in our community, and I note that there's a whole heap of them being put down at Avenel, so I'm really pleased and excited about that for our community down there. I'm also keen to see the Euroa Cinema seating happening, so I think that'll be really looked forward to. Although the cinema is not operating at the moment due to COVID, I'm sure people are looking forward to getting back to the theatre, and I know Avenel people are also keen to see the digital projector and screen being installed down at Avenel as well. So I recommend these projects to my fellow councillors.
Thank you, Councillor Murray. Councillor Horrigan.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. I'd like to support Councillor Murray's comments. I also want to let the community know that a few months ago we changed the procurement policy to have a little bit more of a percentage rating towards local contracting or local businesses. And so if you are a local and you do see these projects come up, please tender for them, because we would, everyone that's applied here has been fantastic, but just a reminder for those local companies.
David, can you put yourself on mute? Thanks, Councillor Horrigan. Any other councillor like to speak? Councillor Haysbert.
I'd like to, support the remarks made by my fellow councillors, and also it's especially important now that we use local suppliers, as we are experiencing some delays on these projects due to COVID and lockdown restrictions that haven't really allowed us to progress on them. So we ask for the community's patience, and yes, local providers, we really do need you to apply for these projects. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Haysbert. Any other councillor like to say anything? Okay, I'd just like to congratulate on especially replacing the Euroa Cinema seating, the community group within the cinema who applied for the grant from the state government to get the money to do this, and I really would like to say thank you to them. And yes, the seating will happen. It's taken us a little while to get the money to do this, but now we've got the money, we can go out and tender, and we'll be able to replace them for the benefit of our community. So that's a great thing for our community who have fought hard to get these new seats. So very much so. All right, councillors, I'd like to put the motion. All those in favour? Against, declare it carried. Okay, 9.2.9. A refuse kit. Well, designation of a bushfire place for last resort in Euroa. Director Roth.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Under the Country Fire Authority Act, council is required to designate bushfire places of last resort, which we have in Longwood, Nagambie, Violet Town, Mangalore, Strathbogie, Ruffy and Avenel. And the proposal is to move the place of last resort in Euroa for reasons I'll talk about in a minute. Essentially, places of last resort are not refuges, and taking information from the CFA website, they're about protecting from direct flame and heat from a fire, but they don't guarantee safety. They're not an alternative to planning to leave early or to stay and defend your property. They're a place of last resort if all the other fire plans have failed. And they are different to community fire refuges or relief centres. As I said before, sheltering at an NSP or a bushfire place of last resort doesn't guarantee safety. CFA or other emergency services may not be present. There will be no support services potentially such as food and drink, medical services, and no provision for pets or livestock. And they may not provide shelter from the elements. So having said that, there are some criteria that need to be satisfied for a bushfire place of last resort, one of which is separation from vegetation. The previous place of last resort in Euroa was in Kirkland Avenue along the creek, which in itself was an issue because it's a rather long piece of land and it's difficult to define. It's also fairly heavily vegetated. So the committee, the Municipal Fire Planning Committee and endorsed by the Emergency Management Planning Committee have identified the site at the Euroa swimming pool as suitable as a place of last resort. The CFA have inspected it against their criteria and it satisfies all of those criteria, and we need to have it in place prior to the 21-22 fire season. There are a couple of other options that were looked at, for example, Binney Street in the commercial area. The Friendlies, we believe, was probably the vegetation was a little close, and moving south of town towards the secondary college, you do tend to get closer towards vegetation. So this site was felt to be the most appropriate. So as I said before, the Fire Planning Subcommittee have approved it. The Municipal Emergency Management Planning Committees have approved it, and now it requires Council to resolve and we can have it in place for the fire season. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Director Roth. Okay, councillors, can I have a councillor move a motion and state their motion, please? Councillor Binks, and your motion is?
Thank you, Mayor Rayburn. I'd like to move a motion that Council accept the recommendation as noted on page 105 of the agenda, please.
Thank you very much, Councillor Binks. Is there a seconder? Councillor Murray. Councillor Binks, would you like to speak?
Yeah, thanks, Mayor Rayburn. This has been a conversation that I've heard since being elected as to, you know, the confusion around the current where on Kirkland Avenue is this bushfire place of last resort. So I think having a new site, a defined site, and having it approved by all the appropriate authorities is a really important step. I think it's really important to reiterate what Director Roth mentioned about it being a place of last resort, and it's not a substitute for a fire plan or a stay and defend plan, and that if you are thinking of doing that, that you really need to follow that up with your local fire CFA fire brigade, and make, you know, well, everyone should have a fire plan. That fire plan may be to leave, and you need to know when that's going to be. And being educated and being familiar with your fire plan is really essential to ensuring all of our safety in every fire season. Thank you.
Councillor Vince, thank you very much. Councillor Murray.
No, formally, thank you, Mayor.
Okay, any other councillor like to speak? Councillor Horrigan.
Yeah, through you, Mayor. Thanks, Director Roth. You touched on a few, I suppose, issues that I was having with this particular report. So I am by far not an expert at all, and so I like to leave it up to them. I am, though, also a community member, and I do have concerns that, you know, if I had to go there for last resort, you know, a resort, if my car wasn't going and that was the only place I could possibly walk to, you know, through my fire plan, that are the toilets appropriate for a big group of people? How would my children go if there is black smoke and then we're rushed, you know, hushed into the pool area? You know, how am I going to keep my eye on them? Are they going to fall in, etc.? So I do have a few concerns, although I'm happy to adopt it for this particular year, but I would be looking at a different suitable spot perhaps after that, if we could.
Thank you, Councillor Horrigan. Councillor Haysbert.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. Yeah, I have similar concerns that Councillor Horrigan raised, but I understand that we're not actually according to the CFA, the site isn't required to have any facilities available to residents. It's very much just a place of last resort. So it's probably unlikely the pool would even be open for people if a bushfire were to occur. Yes, and as Councillor Binks stated, this really does emphasise the need to have your bushfire management plan in place as the bushfire season approaches us.
Okay, any other councillor like to speak on this one? If not, Councillor Binks, you do have a right of reply. Okay, all right, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Those against, declare it carried. Okay, page 114, 9.2.10, Refugee Council of Australia, Afghanistan Advocacy, Director Tingay.
Thank you, Mayor Rayburn. The Refugee Council of Australia has written to all refugee welcome zones, calling on their support to advocate to the Australian federal government on the unfolding crisis in Afghanistan. Strathbogie Shire Council became a refugee welcome zone in 2017. Well, refugee welcome zones are around setting a number of commitments in spirit and in good faith in relation to welcoming refugees into our community, upholding the human rights of refugees, demonstrating compassion for refugees, and enhancing cultural and religious diversity in the community. As part of the request from the Refugee Council of Australia, the Refugee Council of Australia are requesting us as a refugee welcome zone to essentially sign up to their advocacy to the federal government, and their advocacy is based on 7 pillars, and they are listed in the report on page 114. There are a number of organisations that have already signed up to this petition and this advocacy, and there is a recommendation on page 114 for Council's consideration that Council join the advocacy of the Refugee Council of Australia on the unfolding crisis in Afghanistan. Thank you, Mayor Rayburn.
Thank you, Director Tingay. Council, is there a council like to move a motion? Move the motion and state their motion, please. Councillor Binks, and your motion is?
Thank you, Mayor Rayburn. I'd like to move the motion as, move the recommendation as written on page 114 of the agenda, please.
Thank you, Councillor Dickinson.
Yeah, I second that motion. Proudly so, in fact. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Binks, would you like to speak?
Thank you, Mayor Rayburn. Yeah, I would just like to thank officers for including this in our council papers. As a refugee welcome council, I think it's really important that we show our support in the ways that we are asked to, and this seems like an appropriate way for us to help advocate for the rights of these refugees and of the Afghani people who are suffering in the unfolding crisis that we're seeing. We're incredibly fortunate here in the Strathbogie Shire, and this is a small gesture of generosity and love that we can offer. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Binks. Councillor Dickinson.
Yeah, we live in a great country as compared to the people in Afghanistan, the war-torn country, and anything that we can do in a humanitarian effort to assist should be supported, I believe, by everyone. And only today I heard on the news where 150 names were leaked to the media on interpreters' names, and you know, I feel for those people and the consequences that they may have to suffer. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dickinson. Any other councillor like to speak? If not, all right, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against, declare it carried. 9.3.1, which is Strathbogie Shire Council Road Management Plan Review. Director Roth.
Excuse me.
Oh,
through
no,
you,
sorry. Councillor, sorry. Director Tingay, I do apologise.
That's okay. You're probably sick of hearing my voice. Thank you, Mayor Rayburn. At the June council meeting, council resolved to undertake a Section 223 process on the draft road management plan. That process was undertaken and we received 12 submissions in relation to that draft plan. 2 of those submitters were heard by council at a council meeting on the 10th of August, where they presented their thoughts on the draft road management plan. There were a number of changes that were made to the draft road management plan as a result of community feedback and also further engagement with relevant stakeholders. Those changes have been made to the plan and officers have now completed the plan and are providing a recommendation to council tonight to endorse the road management plan 2021-2022, and note that a notice of decision will be published in the Victoria Gazette. Thank you, Mayor Rayburn.
Thank you, Director Tingay. Councillors, can I have a motion, please, and can you state your motion? Thank you. Councillor Binks, and your motion is?
Thank you, Mayor Rayburn. I would like to move a motion that we accept the recommendation on page 120 of the agenda, please.
Thank you very much, Councillor Binks. Is there a seconder? Councillor Horrigan. Councillor Binks, would you like to speak?
Other than to thank the councillors and all the community that submitted to this updated road management plan, no, just thank you.
Pleasure. Thank you, Councillor Horrigan. Okay, any other councillor like to speak? Councillor Haysberg.
I had a few issues raised by some community members about the roadside conservation of the Indigenous flora that exist on our roadsides. And I guess the roadside management plan doesn't really cover this because the roadside management plan deals with the surface of the roads, but there are policies that sort of guide our relationship with the roadside, and these policies are available on our website. But when we have our new website, we will have a page dedicated to roads, and there'll be it will be a lot clearer where to, how to understand and use and get some clear information about the roads and the roadsides. So yeah, I look forward to seeing the new website to help guide our residents.
Thank you, Councillor Haysburg. Yes, it'll be great to be able to have links between each of the policies so that people can move back and forth when they read something. It'll be great when that happens. Okay, any other councillor like to speak? If not, Councillor Binks, do you need a right of reply?
Thanks, Mayor Rayburn. Yeah, I just would like to acknowledge Councillor Haysburg's concerns around the roadside and our we do have some really significant native flora in our roadsides, and they are covered in the roadside management plan, not the road management plan as we're discussing here. And it is an area of complexity, but we are doing all we can to get the best results for the environment and for the community. So yeah, I think having those linked documents and some clear communications as to what is required and what is our responsibility as council and landowners' responsibility around roadsides, and protecting the incredible flora that we have, and which also has lots of fauna living there too. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Binks. Okay, councillors, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against, declare it carried. Now, Director Roth. Page 164, 9.4.1, adoption of the 2021 annual financial report. Director Roth.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm pleased to report that the audit is basically completed, and council needs to pass some resolutions in order to finalise the process. The Audit and Risk Committee reviewed the accounts last Friday and have recommended approval of the accounts. There are only a small number of issues that the auditors raised, which are not significant. The motion allows the CEO to make some minor amendments prior to finalising the document. In discussions with the auditors over the last day or two, there is no change to the bottom line number effectively, but some minor changes to some notes and some reclassification of some items within the notes, but they don't affect the overall statements. From here, we need to pass the resolutions in order to sign the accounts, and then they'll be forwarded off to the Auditor General for him to sign them prior to the 30th of September, although there has been an extension granted for the annual report until the 30th of November, but we wanted to get these finalised as soon as we could. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Director Roth. Okay, councillors, do you have any questions of the Director? If not, councillors, can I have a motion, please, and state your motion? Thank you. Councillor Murray, your motion is?
Thank you, Mayor. My motion is that we adopt the recommendation listed on page 164, that we note the recommendation of the Audit Committee and approve it, the annual financial report, and then items 3, 4, 5 and 6 that are following, we recommend those to you too.
Thank you very much. And could I have a seconder, please? Councillor Binks. Councillor Murray, would you like to speak further?
We looked at this particular this report last Friday at the Audit and Risk Committee, and we're satisfied with the way it was put together and the bottom line there, and we recommended it be adopted to council, and I support that recommendation.
Thank you very much. Councillor Binks.
Thank you, Mayor Rayburn. I'd like to thank Director Roth and his team for producing this report, and also to the Audit and Risk Committee for their role in approving it and having it come to the meeting. It's an important element of local government, and yeah, thanks for all your work in making it all work.
Thank you, Councillor Binks. Any other councillor like to speak? If not, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against, declare it carried. Okay, the page 213, 9.4.2, adoption of performance statement 2020-21, governance and management checklist 2021, Director Roth.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As part of the audit package, the performance statement identifies a number of financial and non-financial indicators which have to be audited, and the governance and management checklist just identifies a number of processes that we need to make sure we're up to date with during the year. So those two documents are there for authorisation. The only change is there's been some explanatory notes put into some of the items, but the numbers haven't changed from what you've seen. So similar to the statements, they need to be signed and forwarded off for Auditor General approval. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Director Roth. Councillors, may I have a motion, please, and can you state your motion? Councillor Hayes-Burke, your motion is?
Yeah, I'd like to move the recommendation on page 213 of the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hayes-Burke. Is there a seconder? Councillor Horrigan. Councillor Hayes-Burke, would you like to speak?
Thanks, Mayor. I'd just like to thank the officers for putting this work together. It's an important part of what we do. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Horrigan. Any other councillor like to speak? If not, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against, declare it carried. Thank you. Okay, 9.5.1 on page 233, adoption of the Mutual Respect Charter. CEO Solomon, thank you.
Thank you, and through you, Mayor. Before you tonight, we have a draft Mutual Respect Charter that has been developed to underline the commitment that we have to providing a safe and respectful workplace and an inclusive and respectful interactions between all people that interact with Council at any one time. Council is committed to interacting more with its community in relation to decision making as it sets out in the public transparency policy and our community engagement framework. However, in being more consultative, there has been a growing number of incidents where interactions between council, community and staff have not been as respectful as they should be. This in turn has had an adverse impact on us maintaining a safe and respectful workplace for all. By adopting this statement around rights and behaviours, Council is enabling all parties to call out inappropriate behaviour and to allow complaints around a breach of the Charter to be made to the Mayor or to the Chief Executive Officer. Before you on page 234, councillors, there is a recommendation to adopt the Mutual Respect Charter, display it on our civic facilities and on our website and on our internet, and also to undertake a awareness and education campaign relating to the Mutual Respect Charter should it be adopted tonight. Thank you, councillors.
Thank you, CEO Solomon. Okay, councillors, do you have any questions of the CEO? If not, councillors, can I have a councillor move a motion and state their motion, please? Councillor Murray, your motion is?
Can I move that we adopt the recommendation listed on page 234 of our agenda dealing with the Mutual Respect Charter?
Thank you, Councillor Murray. Is there a seconder? Councillor Binks. Councillor Murray, would you like to speak?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Rayburn. This is a way in which that we can show some leadership in this particular area. I think Council can, and make a clear statement about our position in terms of being respectful and courteous and fair to each other. We understand, I suppose, as being part of council and being councillors, that disagreement about issues is a natural thing and is going to occur, but that those disagreements should be expressed without any verbal abuse or degradation of others and disrespect towards others. So I think that's important even when you are disagreeing with someone. So I think this is a good a reminder to all the participants in our community of the value of respect and looking after each other and being kind to each other, particularly in these particular times. I think that's important as well, and I think it makes clear what each of our rights and each of our responsibilities are. So I recommend this charter to our community, to my fellow councillors, and to all the council officers. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Murray. Councillor Binks.
Thank you, Mayor Rayburn. I would like to support Councillor Murray's remarks, and I think there's an opportunity to learn how we can disagree with grace and empathy, and I think that's a really valid and important way to be able to be a functioning, productive democracy. And in this community, you know, we're a close-knit community. We live together, we work together, we play together. We're not always going to agree, but we can disagree with grace and empathy. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Binks. Any other councillor like to speak? Councillor Horrigan.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Rayburn. This mutual respect charter had come about by a fellow councillor, and I can't remember which one, so I'm not going to offend anyone by pointing one out. But I think it's been a great initiative, and it is about having different opinions to someone else. But you can still make a complaint if you don't agree with us. There's nothing wrong with that. This document isn't to silence anyone. It's just about doing it respectfully. We're all human beings, you know. Some of us are mum, sisters, brothers, you know, cousins, niece, someone, and so are the officers, and we're all trying our best with the tools that we have, and we just want to make sure that we respect each other and we respect the community and vice versa. And it would be great if you could have a read through it too, because there is, you know, a few points in there. So I know that some people feel uncomfortable because, you know, they might write into council more than a few times. You won't be discriminated against that. You're not going to be called, names because you write in often. We appreciate that feedback. So I really appreciate this document too.
Thank you, Councillor Horrigan. Any other councillor like to speak? Councillor Haysbert.
Thanks, Mayor, and thanks for the comments from my fellow councillors. Yes, I'm really happy to support the adoption of the Mutual Respect Charter. I think it will help build trust between councils and the community and officers and the community. And I really appreciate the fact that it sets a high standard of respect, because us as a public organisation, we can lead by example. I just hope that officers and councillors feel safe to call on this charter, to cite it if they need to, because that's what it's there for. And I do hope it gets adopted tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Haysbert. Any other councillor like to speak? If not, Councillor Murray, you do have the right of reply.
No, that's fine. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? Declare it carried. Well done, councillors, and I think this is a great effort for us and for our community. Okay, page 241, 9.5.2, Business Management System, CEO Solomon.
Thank you, and through you, Mayor. This is our monthly business management system report that it just provides an overview of the activity across council for the month. It is also part of our commitment to providing transparency to not only our councillors, but also to our community. Of note, this month we have Building and planning continued to be strong performers, particularly in the Lake Ngambie ward, where there is a significant number of new subdivisions being released. We've also had customer requests lodged for the month, focusing on council assets and roads, with many reports of potholes and drainage issues caused by high levels of rainfall and windstorm events. The allocation of the outdoor crews has shifted in response to these events and also in response to the strict COVID-19 workplace restrictions. So our outdoor crews have been strongly focusing on safety and hazard reduction work, such as drainage clearing works as a result of those restrictions. Councillors, for your information, for your endorsement, there is a recommendation on page 241 of the agenda that the report be noted. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, CEO Solomon. Councillors, can I have someone move a motion and state their motion, please? Councillor Horrigan, and your motion is, thanks.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. So I'd like to move the motion that we adopt the recommendation on page 241 of the agenda.
Thank you, Councillor Horrigan. Is there a seconder? Councillor Hayes-Burke. Councillor Horrigan, would you like to speak?
Thank you, through you, Mayor. Just like to thank CEO Solomon for the reasoning, and very valid reasoning too, about why the roads customer service records have been lodged, and just to speak to the community again this month to say, please don't lodge your requests on Facebook community groups. Please make sure that you're calling the council, just so that we can actually do something about it, because not all officers or councillors are actually watching the Facebook URL community action group. So it's more to help you to get those potholes fixed. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Horrigan. Councillor Hayes-Burke. Okay, any other councillor like to speak? If not, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against, declare it carried. Okay, CEO Solomon, do we have a notice of motion?
Through you, Mayor, there are none for this evening's meeting. Thank you.
We have a notice of rescission.
Through you, Mayor, there are none for this evening.
Okay, well, number 12 has already been dealt with. Number 13, confidential business. Is there any confidential business we have to work through?
Through you, Mayor, there is no confidential business to be discussed tonight.
Thank you. Okay, this comes to the closure of the meeting, and I'd like to say thank you to our community for sitting through tonight. I know at the start it took us a little while to get running, but we've now finished in a reasonable time of night of 8:05, which is very good actually. So councillors, our next Shire Council meeting will be on the 19th of October at 6 p.m. So I'd say we will be still doing it virtually under the roadmap that the state government has come out with. So we'll remain, the public gallery will remain closed, so it'll be still on the virtual system. So I thank everybody very much for attending tonight, and I thank everybody for their contribution. So good night to all.